Hi everyone, this is Fab Dupont. Welcome to GearFest 2020, the virtual GearFest. I have the great pleasure of having Jacquire King here, and I'm going to interview him on his first ever Luna recording session. Luna, the recording system by Universal Audio. You've heard of Luna. If you haven't, now's the time. Hi Jacquire, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Fab. How are you?
I'm doing great. I see you're in your studio in Nashville.
I am.
And I am in my studio in New York, and these are the wonders of modern technology.
Here we are.
Yes, here we are. So I listened to this session, which, by the way, everyone, the session is available for download on the entire session. No smoke, no mirrors, no hidden things behind curtains. The session that Jacquire produced and recorded and mixed is available for you to download. So I propose we listen to a couple bars, like say the intro up until the chorus of the song, so you guys have more of a sonic idea of what came together. Here we go.
What's left when fortune fair returns a thief? Providence is too brief. What's left to grieve? Currency, the bitter end. After the flood, what remains? The wine of Lebanon. The wine of Lebanon. What's left when harvest tugs upon?
And voila. Sounds really lovely and mellow and, dare I say, modern vintage. Jacquire, what's the idea behind the project?
You know, this is the first multi-track session that was done in Luna, so we wanted to create this opportunity for the users, but it was also an opportunity for us to kind of battle test it and put it through its paces. We went into United Recording in Los Angeles. I worked in Studio A. And we set up a pretty big Apollo rig to run Luna on, because Studio A has a Focusrite console. There's a BCM10 in the room, and then just to be able to bring in a system and set up something that was able to incorporate using those consoles and also all of the Apollo Unison technology for the virtual record pads. Wanted to bring a traditional studio setup together with this modern recording system.
All right, so it was a mostly live session, right? A live band.
Yes,
and
it was
how
a
much
live
of it
band.
was how much of it was recorded live, and how much of it was done in overdubs?
The majority of it what I would say would be done live. We took the drums, the bass, the piano, Rhodes keyboard, electric guitar, and a scratch vocal as the foundational track. Okay. We overdubbed a pass or two more of keyboards. There's some Juno in there. Mm-hmm. Dan, who was playing guitar, Dan Aid was, I think we did one other pass, so there's a double of his guitar parts. Mm-hmm. And then we redid the vocals. The vocals are doubled. There's some doubled harmonies. And then once we'd completed the tracking of the song for the band, then we had an arrangement done for the strings, and then recorded that out in Santa Cruz at Universal Audio.
Oh, that's amazing. Jacquire, do you remember what your Apollo rig was at United? What did you bring? What did you guys bring?
There was an X16 and two 8Ps and a twin.
All right, so that gives you about 16 pre's and 16 line-ins. And you dropped that right in with the $500,000 Focusrite and the BCM10. For those of you who don't know what a BCM10 is, it's a bunch of 1073 with faders attached to it. Let's just look at it that way. So how did you parse your stuff? I can show actually on the session, but how did you parse your stuff? How did you decide what you would use where, and what you use unison pre's for and whatnot and stuff like that?
Well, I wanted to just to demonstrate that the Apollo platform with the Luna recording system is ready for a professional studio environment. So I I wanted to have the 16X there to interface, to be able to use some channels on the console and use the BCM10. I wanted primarily like to have the dynamic things like the drum mics on the kick and the snare, overheads. The piano is with the unison record paths. Cass's vocal is. I wanted the majority of the record paths to be the unison technology, and then I used the Focusrite for the bass and a couple of the room channels for the drums, and then the electric guitars are on the BCM10. I just wanted to build a really big system and incorporate both sides of the platform technology and just bring it all together for myself, because I've sort of been 1 foot in, 1 foot out over time, just because of the way my studio environment works. I haven't fully switched over, and I want to, and so I saw this as an opportunity not only to push the limits of what Luna could do, but also sort of prove it for myself. And it piggybacks off of the video I did some time ago with the sort of the hardware shootout. I wanted to take kind of another step along that journey for myself and incorporate all these things.
That's awesome. For those of you who are going to download the session, if you want to see, and that's one of the amazing features of Luna. So Jacquire was in LA at United, recorded this, and then the session is on the site. I downloaded the session. I'm here at Flux. I click record on the snare channel, and Jacquire's settings and Jacquire's plugins from that session are coming right up, right here on my system, because he's using the UAD real-time plugins. And these are record effects. They're being recorded, committed to tape. So that is a very cool feature. So I strongly urge you to download the session and check out how Jacquire did it, because you can. So that's cool. And you can see here throughout the session all the different channels that had the unison preamp. Like Jacquire said, this is the lead vocal, this is the lead double, that was unison, and the violins on the subsequent session and stuff like that. So that's an important aspect of Luna, that it integrates with Apollo so well that the settings of a recording session can actually travel with the session. If you think about it, if you've been doing a lot of traveling from studio to studio, it's pretty awesome. Let's nerd out a second. Enough talking about music. Nobody cares about music. Let's talk about knobs, because every DAW has its own idiosyncrasies and its own ways of doing things. So and everybody, all of this, you, me, we all have different workflows. So I see the way you did it here is you basically bust every group of instruments into a bus right here, which is in orange. You can see the bus, and those buses are routed to a main bus. You have processing on the buses and you have processing on the main bus. So what was your idea of doing that? Like, how did you think, how am I going to organize my session in this brand new DAW? What do I do? What went through your head?
Well, I mean, oftentimes I like bussing things, all the drums together and just the different instruments, so that I can have a little bit of treatment on those groups. So I can do parallel compression, let's say, on the drums on that bus. But so that's kind of a standard thing for me. And then just take it to a mix bus treatment. Take all of those subgroups to the mix bus. Another reason, especially in Luna, which is really cool, is on each of those buses there's the spill feature. And the spill feature lets you, so I've created, in much in the way that like an SSL console has the VCAs in the middle of the console, so you can sit in the middle of the console and you have control over those groups. I mean, it's working like that as well. So I can automate and adjust the volume of all of the drums with that one bus. But then the spill feature allows you to solo it up, solo all the drums up, and just focus on those, just hear those, and just be in that one location so I'm not scrolling all over the place in the mix window. But what I love about it especially is that it mirrors that to the edit window, so that if you push the like you hit spill on the drums, then only the drums are showing in the edit window. And that's really convenient, instead of having to scroll around to try to find something and get it into your view, and you can just focus. You can just focus on the automation there.
It's pretty awesome. I really, that's one of my favorite features of the whole thing. It's really great to be able to work like that. So we have a basic idea. You can see here Jacquire's organization. The bass is on top and it's pink. And then there's like blue drums, green guitars, orange synths, blue leads, and other vocals. Effects, these three things are effects. A reverb, a microshift, and an echoplex. And then there's the strings. And these at the bottom here in orange are the buses. So we saw that you organized all your sessions going through these buses. And one of the main features of Luna is the ability to insert Neve summing modeling on the buses. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you use it?
Every time I listen to something kind of play back in Luna through the tape and Neve emulation, it gives me that feeling of being in the studio when I was working with just a console and tape machine. I remember very specifically the point in the session at United. The setup was really intense, and there was some troubleshooting, and once we actually started recording the song and kind of getting some takes to play back, I was listening and it just kind of struck me how analog and beautiful it sounded. That's I would attribute that, I would attribute it to many things because it's really well designed software, but those emulations really sort of add a lot that it has been missing from digital recording until now.
How would you describe it in words for people who are going to try and get the session and then turn all the studios on and off? Because you can do that, by the way. If you click option, now you can turn off all the studios on the whole session, and then you can turn them back on. So it's really easy to A/B. In your own like emotional description, how would you describe that sound? What does it do to your sound?
It makes it feel warm and gives it texture and depth, and the way that it treats the transients. I mean, typically in digital recording and mixing in the box, we have to work so hard to kind of create saturation and distortion and all these sort of layering of those types of elements, the transient control and the gluing together that you get out of tape and a console. This gives me such a feeling. It transports me back to the feeling of before I was using digital recording, and just how nicely things would come together. And yeah, I mean that session I think sounds tremendous, and there's not a lot going on in there. It's not a lot of heavy lifting. It's because of how sort of magical and analog the recording system sounds. I mean, Luna, especially when you have the Studer and you can play with the different tape formulas and tape speed and the elevation and kind of nerd out on that stuff. It feels very familiar. It kind of gives me chills. It makes me feel kind of makes me fall in love with the sound of records again.
Yeah, it's a very special thing. In your previous answer, I heard you mentioned the Neve summing again. I'd be curious to know, so again, for people to be able to project when they're trying to listen to what it does, how would you describe in sensory words what the Neve summing does in Luna to your sound?
Well, it has the warmth and the transformer sound of Neve. It kind of glues things together. It just adds a richness and a texture and a depth to it that, a console in a DAW up until this point it's been a kind of a passive sound. It's not really a sound. I mean, the only sound we really get out of a mix console sort of architecture in a DAW is the sound of dither and the way it truncates and manages things. It's not really a tone, and having the Neve in there, it gives you that tone. And using all that summing and that Neve sound on the mix bus, my processing has to work less hard because the Neve is creating color and gluing things together. It's just an easier sound. Honestly, I've been mixing in Luna a lot, and it's just so much faster, not only because the workflow is simpler and intuitive, but because of the sound of it. I'm having to think of less things to do to get the sound I'm after. I think most of the time what we're chasing is the sounds of the records of the past that we love and trying to interpret them and display them in a modern sensibility. And this kind of just puts a little bit more of it at your fingertips and makes it easier.
For those of you who have an Apollo, I really recommend you download the session. And the thing, if you really want to get the vibe for what this can do for you, is you bypass all the tapes, and then you come to the input section. And you go here and you bypass all the Neves and listen before and after, and you will feel the difference, and you will start recognizing that sound from records you know. Let me show you an example of having all the tape and all the Neve summing on, and then the same exact session of the song with all the tape and all the Neve summing off. Obviously, this is not the highest quality listening environment. You're listening through your browser. I strongly recommend that you download the session and try it for yourself, but at least I can show you how to do it. Also, I can try and point you towards the interesting parts. Listen to the snare in its position. Like, how does it feel? Does it feel real and kind of like a documentary, or does it feel more like a movie, a little pushback? And listen to the bass and the bass drum together, and then listen to the shine on the vocals and the overall feeling, glue, the impression of it. So this is the chorus with all the goodies on.
The wine of Lebanon. The wine of Lebanon. What's left when harvest tugs upon her yoke?
All right. Now I'm going to turn all the tape off in the session, and I'm going to turn off all the Neve summers in the whole session.
The wine of Lebanon. The wine of Lebanon. What's left when harvest tugs upon her yoke?
It's pretty wild. What do you think, Jacquire?
Doesn't sound bad, but it doesn't give me the wonderful feeling that that all that tape and Neve summing, all the harmonics and transient gluing and low end and focus it gives it. That's the thing, it's like in a real dynamic section. I mean, digital recording is, it's kind of one to one. Tape and Neve, the louder something gets, the more it kind of compresses it and controls the transient. So, the clarity and dynamics off of tape are reduced. The clarity is there, but as things get louder, it sort of softens it and turns it down in a way, not necessarily volume-wise, but transient energy. Mm-hmm. And so Absolutely. it makes it feel it's more controlled. And you need to use less compression and just, all the other things that we sort of wrestle with.
I noticed you only used three. You use very, very few reverbs in there. You have three for the vocals. You have one reverb, which is the chambers, the phenomenal chambers. This guy, which I love very much so. And then Echoplex. And then you're using the Santoys microshift to do the H3000, and that's about it. Everything else is got the natural tone of the room. Is that on purpose, or was it part of the thing? Tell me about that, because the whole session is basically 3 or 4 reverbs for 50 tracks.
Yeah, I mean, it is very on purpose. It's a large room. It's not. There's a feeling of space in that room. It's not like terribly ambient, though. There's not like a long reverb tail, but it. Mm-hmm. And the quality of, I mean, part of it is there's really cool effects on the guitars coming through the amp, and then sort of the piano part, it's kind of swirling at times, and then the way that there's some pedals and stuff on the keyboards on the Juno, so there's a lot of sounds that we're creating on the floor as inputs that already have a lot of texture and depth, and with the room mics, I didn't really feel like I needed to add a lot, and it's also it is a little bit of more of a classic sound that I was going for. It's like this classic modern thing, and in a classic studio, you might be able to grab one or two chambers. If you're at Capitol Records, you might be able to use one or two of the chambers because the other rooms were using the other ones. You didn't have tons of effects to use, so you made the most of what you had. I mean, that's part of it. The primary thing was that we were creating the sounds that created the dimension and space from the source. And like the strings, it's like they're mic'd ambiently as well. And the close mics are there for the focus and to be able to manage the balance, but the general feeling of space is you're getting from the room mics, and that's sort of the general approach. And the other thing I will say is that the people that can download the session and listen to it, I mean, solo up the piano, solo up the drums. You will hear the other instruments. You will hear the other instruments in the drum mics. So so that also gives you that spill and leakage, gives you that sense of dimension. So I'm not having to fabricate a bunch of it either.
Yeah, I think that is the best thing for everyone to do. Download the session. It is such a gift to have. Download the session, bypass all the plugins, and listen to the raw tracks. And that's how you can learn how the balance came together. And then when you have the plugins or you can use the demos, you can really get the vibe on how Jacquire built this mix. And I think that is the whole point of this talk, is to give you guys the energy and the motivation to go check it out for yourself. There's so much you can learn from this session. The gain staging, the microphone placements. Also, in the session, there's a document that shows you the layout. You can see pictures of the studio. There's actually Jacquire's microphone layout with what microphone he used, through what preamp, through what compressor, and everything. Everything's in there. And for all the unison preamps that he used, they're still in the session, so you can actually see all the settings. This is the closest thing to being there that you can have. And I think that's pretty awesome. And it's really great of Universal Audio to have done this. And it's really amazing that Luna can actually do this, keep the original settings inside the session. So I think this is... Thank you so much, Jacquire, for taking the time to come discuss this with us at GearFest 2020, the virtual GearFest. I love this song. I think it's great. It's a beautiful showcase of both the music, the technology, and the vision. There's a music video of this, and I think after the mix, Pete Lyman mastered it, and there's actually a full Spotify version available and a full video available. Correct?
Yes, there is. Yeah. You get to see all the behind the scenes kind of the environment that we're in, and yeah, it's nice because you can see some of the mic placements, you can see the interaction, and yeah, I just want to reiterate that one of the things that I was particularly excited about this, well, two things, is the forensic ability to look at what the inputs are. You plug the same microphone in. Now, obviously, you don't have the same source, but plug the same microphone in, and you can get a sense of how those settings work with that microphone, and then. So there's that ability, but then also for some recordists that have maybe not had as much experience recording an ensemble live, to hear what is acceptable, and actually not just acceptable but really useful leakage, and how it does create the dimension. Because you can listen to the sound of the drums, but if you turn off the piano and some of the other instrumentation where there is a little bit of the drum sound in there, you'll hear how it changes and influences the drum picture. Yep. So those things are particularly exciting for me as well.
I think the whole thing is awesome. It's really beautiful. So thanks a lot for lending yourself to the exercise, and thanks for your time today. And I'll see you on the producer panel.
All right, man. Sounds good.
All right. Cheers.